Hello, everyone. Welcome to Getting Started, the Story Track. I'm Wendy with FamilySearch, and I am so excited to talk with you today. We are going to talk about family photos, thinking about our past, present, and future. And we're here with Rachel, and she's going to introduce herself, but it is an honor to have everyone joining. We're thrilled that you want to spend some time learning about creating this sort of look at your life through family photos. So Rachel, will you tell us a little bit about you? And you've got such a long list of things you've done in the photography space, just tell us all of it.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with everyone today and talking about storytelling through photos is always one of my favorite topics. So thanks for having me, Wendy and team. I will give a little bit of background. My story started when I picked up my first camera and I decided that I had found my calling, my passion, and pursued photojournalism as a career opportunity. So I went to college to study photojournalism, and during that process, I realized that what I really loved was the storytelling part of it. It wasn't necessarily the technique of photography or even the camera gear. It was getting a chance to tell family stories. And usually the projects that I gravitated to and even the newspaper assignments that I had as a freelance photographer always focused on, farm families or small town life or family life. And to me, I felt like while everyone else was focusing on sort of the big world history events, I really appreciated the everyday events that made family life so special. So fast forward a few years, I had a degree in photojournalism. I met my husband. He's also a photographer. So we got married and started exploring career options and realized that it was going to be really hard for us to find jobs together at the same newspaper or magazine back in the world of journalism.
Yes.
So we had this crazy idea. So we thought we'll photograph weddings in a documentary style. So we started photographing weddings as documentary photojournalists, wedding photojournalists, and really fell in love with it because we realized that we were trading our front row seats to world history as photojournalists to have a front row seat at family history, weddings. And so we were watching a new family starting and this whole chapter unfolding that we felt really, honestly, pretty privileged to be able to witness and to bear witness through our cameras to something that we viewed as being very sacred and special. So that was about a 10-year adventure of photographing weddings. And I think that was probably the best training in photography, storytelling, and family history that I ever could have asked for. I didn't know that what we were doing was really family history until I started putting together wedding albums. That was, natural, request from our clients was wedding album, a book that told the story of their day and that they could look back on later. And I remember sitting with one of our clients, a couple who came to our studio and we're showing them, their album for the first time and going through it together and talking about each picture. And I guess the moment that Andrew looked at it and said, we're actually capturing these pictures, not just for you, but for generations 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. And that was the moment where I think it clicked for really both of us that what we were creating would stand the test of time. And it was a really special moment. And I think that kind of catalyzed all of the work that I do now as a curator and as someone who helps other families, besides just, wedding clients, curate their own family photos. And I've moved into that curator role and really embraced it in a way that is exciting and has led to other fun projects recently. So it's awesome.
Wow. Okay. We get to I hope everyone realizes how special we are to get to learn from Rachel because we want to talk about curating our own family photos and thinking, you also have a project, which that's how I originally found you, called SaveFamilyPhotos. And will you tell us just a little bit about that? And then we'll go into the topic, but you're just so honored that you're here with us, sharing all of your years of wisdom.
I almost forgot that's how we connected. And I think you reached out because you were following my Instagram project feed and said, hey, I'd love to hear more about this. And it was still really early then in its infancy as a project. And it's now grown to, over 90,000 followers who contribute their own family photos to this collective archive online to talk about pictures that spark memories. So SaveFamilyPhotos, it really started, I think, I can say this now because I didn't realize it at the time, that it might have been a form of therapy for me a little bit because I was grieving the loss of my grandfather who had had died, and I inherited a box full of family photos from my grandmother, and she looked at me and really entrusted me with caretaking those photos. And I had never spent much time looking at them. I was so busy capturing other people's history that I didn't really have a lot of time to digest my own. So I opened up this box of photos and started realizing that, in fact, my story started before me, and that there was this love story in these pictures in front of me with my grandparents, and then later my mother and her story as she grew up with them. And then I turned to my dad's side of the family and started looking through those family photos and realizing just how much treasure was ready to be unearthed. And so I just, out of curiosity and maybe a desire to share my grandfather's story a little bit, I started posting pictures on Instagram and tagged some friends and asked them if they wanted to share anything about their loved ones through a single picture. Just pick one and share what it sparks in you, what memory or legacy that it sparks. And it really took off. People were hungry to contribute. And I think I discovered accidentally that there was a real desire to connect with each other and the commonalities that we have through our families, and shared struggles, shared victories, milestones like birthdays, reunions. I mean, we all really, it's kind of the human family story, is that we all care about the same things. And it made me really hopeful, I think, at a time when I really needed that hope. And honestly, 2020 has been a year where I've invested a lot of time reading those stories, even from 5 years ago on the Save Family Photos Instagram, because it just reminds me that there's so much good in the world. There's good to come, and we can look back on history and remember that even in the struggle, there's always the redemption and the positivity as well. So,
oh, I love that. And so you have such a sort of unique lens to lend expertise to understanding how we can tell, or how we can represent our family. Let's talk a little bit about photos from the past. And as someone who's curated photos professionally and shot photography for lots of different, like you said, family purposes, what makes a compelling photo from the past? Like, what is something that really draws you in? Or
that's a great question. So I think one of the things I always look for in my own family archives when I go back and just thumb through the photos or look through the scans that I've made over the years, I always look for moments that reveal the personalities, the true personalities of my loved ones. And I think that that's what's always so intriguing for me and really gives me an emotional connection to a picture, is when I can see my grandmother as a teenager looking at my grandfather and seeing that spark in her eyes that it's hard to even quantify, and you don't really get it as much from post photos. I think that I do tend to appreciate and prefer the snapshots, the quick in between moments that were captured just normal day-to-day life, or even at an event where you captured something that was happening in between the big moments. So it might not be the cake cutting, it might actually be just the bride interacting with her mother, for example. Those are the modern day versions of it. I always told our brides that too, that 30 years from now, you'll appreciate the pictures that happened in between the big events more than you'll even appreciate the first dance or the cake cutting. It's all those little in between moments that make up a great wedding album or a great family album. And that's true for old pictures too. And they're even more rare in old pictures because there was a time when, of course, camera technology, the optical technology, wasn't sophisticated enough in terms of shutter speed or lighting to be able to capture quick moving events. So there's so many post photos in all of our archives, and they're great too because the clothes are fascinating, or the old cars. Those pictures to me are less about the people and more about the sense of place and sense of time and era. And I think it's okay to say, hey, I may not feel as emotional when I look at those photos. I truly don't. When I see a photo of my family that's posed or a little more stoic, I don't necessarily feel emotionally connected to it, but I get a glimpse into what life was like at that particular moment in time. But then the supplementary photos that are more the accidental snapshots or the imperfect images are the ones that really tell the complete story. I think the key and maybe the magic of curation for any of us is how do we combine those so that they tell that complete story, and it's not just one-off glimpse into a person's life, but rather a full story about who they were.
I love that lens of, you said, reveal someone's personality, because as we look back, and some people don't have a lot of photos, or they may have been given something like you were given, which a shoebox or a pile of photos, and going through it and looking for those things that maybe you want to display or you want to share or you want to pass on. I love that lens of personality. And I think that's what we crave when we look back at our family history. We look at, records, and we see facts and locations, but it's those like, oh, the occupation or the physical, description. Those are the things that kind of make a person come to life.
Exactly. Yeah. And they
So
keep us connected to our ancestors and to those who came before us in a way that I really feel like imagery is the best way to do that. And it kind of, maybe in a way, it's like the glue that holds all of those facts together into a more complete story. So it illustrates a lot of what we know as fact or data and turns it into more of a data story that's driven by real characters and real people rather than just the numbers. Yeah.
And we're all made up of so many characters. So, okay, so look for photos that reveal personality. Now, if we're talking present, if we're talking today, and then we're going to kind of talk about future, I think they're all connected, because you talk about the curation, and the combination is where kind of the story comes. But if you were to say to me, Wendy, you're doing family photos, here's my recommendation, doing something that is representative, because that's what's important to me. What tips do you have for that?
Wow, I think this is a great question, because I still know so many professional photographers, and I know the questions they're asked. And
Yes.
also I know how professional photographers try to position themselves in the market with SEO and with their websites to have a clear offering of what it is they do. And I would say that as much as I do value, again, posed family portraits, which are important. I mean, it's great to get everyone together and pick out the clothes and have these moments of, I would say forced perfection, but a little bit of polish is okay.
Yes.
But just remember that, when you're searching for either a professional photographer to capture some moments for you, or you're doing it yourself, remember that embracing the imperfection and embracing the kind of silly, goofy, or accidental moments usually yields pictures that will be a lot more valuable in the long run, because they will supplement the more stoic posed pictures that will mean more to future generations, because they'll get a sense of, who y'all really were. And I think that the best way to do that is to kind of, actually, there are a lot of great even blog posts out there about documentary family photography that I enjoy reading. And there are quite a few photographers. There's actually a group called the Family Narrative that I love. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but I speak at their conferences, and I've really enjoyed getting to know the group leaders, and they really serve family photographers who want to learn more about that approach to documenting real life. And it's everything from, the first moments of bringing the newborn home and the chaos that ensues when the house is, full of kids and laundry piled up, and, all of the realities that at the time they just seem so overwhelming, or even like they're just not pretty, but you really want to remember that later, because it will jog the stories and memories.
Yes. Okay. I love that. So, show things that I actually like that phrase, not pretty, but like real, that are going to show and jog memory. So you can have some polish, but also the moments, kind of what you described with wedding photography, the moments in between the big events. I look back at some of the photos I've taken, and, you sometimes think, okay, guys, we're going to do another photo. And I can tell when my kids are like I made them stand in the middle of the street. This was a couple months ago. I mean, they're all grown-ups, because I thought it was a beautiful sunset, and their faces that was a story. That story was, we have been photographed our whole life, and we love our mom, and we're going to stand in this road, but we're not going to be happy about it.
Totally. Yep. No, right. Exactly. Yeah.
It tells of the relationship, and the emotion, I think, is important to see. And you can see that. So if we're thinking about photographing things to kind of tie our past, present, and future together, when you think about photographing things for the future, you talked a little bit about this with some of the, when you talked about the wedding photography, what do you keep in mind when you are having that lens? How do we photograph to really represent who we are in the future?
I think part of it is zooming out. That's one thing I always encourage photographers to do, is instead of zooming in, actually zoom out.
Okay.
And zooming out is risky, right? Because you include a lot more clutter, and you include more elements in the frame, because, at the end of the day, a photograph is a two-dimensional frame. Like, you're looking at it from only 2 dimensions. And so the more you zoom out, the more information you can include in that photo. And I think that, often it's what's at the edges of the frame that starts to add dynamism or interest to a picture. So you'll even hear in sort of professional photography circles, they talk about layering, like how many layers of the story can you capture in one single frame? Like how many things are happening? So there's a photographer I know named Kirsten Lewis, who's in Colorado. And I love her photographs because she just packs so much story in every single frame. And so, there was one I saw where it's, the mom has a newborn and she's just brought home, baby from the hospital and, on the couch and trying to figure out breastfeeding and everything else that goes along with those, stresses. And there's like a toddler in the background, like naked, just running through the house. And you just know, you can like feel the chaos, but also the serenity at the same moment. And that's the dichotomy. That's the real life that you want to look at later. Maybe in the moment, it just feels completely stressful or anxious, but it's so real. I was actually going to grab, this is kind of funny. So I have this photo here at my desk that's my grandparents, and it's actually it's not their wedding photo. It was the engagement party they had before the wedding. And it's like, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of glary, but it was actually like, I can tell it was not the photographer had a pose picture right before this, but this was the one I've always like blown up and printed and framed because it's like the look between them. They're like locked in their gaze. And I'm sure it wasn't like, I don't think he said, hey, look at each other, because I can tell it's a brief glance and it's such a cherished picture, but that's just it. Like, I like the other one too. And I have the formal wedding photo and I have that frame, but this is the one that I want closest to me. That shows me more about who they were and their like depth of love for each other and commitment. So, I think you need that. You need both. You actually do need both. I mean, you need the formal, and they're kind of the, I don't know, they're like the, what's the right word? Like sort of the road signs along the way in the story. Like you have these different guideposts, I guess, but then, you have all of the stuff in between that really brings it to life and doesn't just feel boring.
Yes. And there's such a sense of, it's almost as if the connection is visible. And, FamilySearch, we love to talk about connections. We have a getting started track all about connection and connecting with your family because it's so important. And I love this idea of zooming out. And I think not only does that make sense from someone photographing a family, but that makes sense from someone living within a family to take a step back and look at the big picture and see all the pieces and everything and just be grateful and appreciative for the opportunity to be a part of the zoomed in experience as well. Rachel, this stuff is gold. I'm loving all this.
My photojournalism degree would actually pay off in another way.
Oh, it's paying off. I feel like we are just sitting here learning from you and your wisdom. As we're wrapping up, like what would your last sort of message or tip be for people who really want to curate a representation through photography of their family and, all past, present, and future?
I think I would say that in the new year, let's all look forward to 2021, which will be a great year. I'm convinced it's going to be an awesome year, and we can all look forward to new projects with new life. And I think one thing that I'm actually going to tackle in 2021, and I'm encouraging a lot of friends to do, is to curate photos with a theme in mind. So actually start with a theme because it helps you as a lens through which you view which photos to include, and it gives you a natural starting point so you don't feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
So I had a theme for a project last year that was called Namesake, and it was all of the people that my son is named after. So I had like present day pictures, whether it's iPhone pictures or professional newborn pictures of our son, plus the grandparents he's named after, and it's a variety of grandparents whose names or stories are included. And then I commingled them into a book that I designed online, and it was really fun to be able to take those photos and kind of compile them into something completely new. But it was very specific. So instead of trying to gather every photo, I just started with photos that related to him that he would be able to look at one day and see, oh yeah, like I can see my eyes in my great grandfather's eyes, or, there are even pictures that start to seem similar. When you look at them and you lay it all out, you realize just, well, there is his great grandfather in a diaper. There's our son in a diaper, and they actually do look kind of similar. And you put them side by side, and it's so fun to see the past and the present all together. And even to imagine that being like a volume set over the years, maybe he'll add to it one day with a book of his own. And it's just there are other themes like that, like holidays through the years is a really fun one. And I think I've seen some families do challenges we've faced where they go back and there was one that had Dust Bowl era pictures of like sharecropper family members, and they had taken that, and they're still from a farm family now in Missouri, and so they were adding more supplemental photos of today, like their modern family farm, and kind of showing this full story. It was really neat. That's a big project. So
That's a big
smaller projects could be like even, you know, curating just a simple gallery wall, I think, in your home can be really great, where maybe you pick, you know, it could be, you know, iPhone photos you've taken of your own family in the last year, and then, you know, going back and finding older pictures and saying, you know, what would I like to include at different sizes that actually tell a simple story on a wall about how our family has evolved and changed and overcome challenges over the years. Or maybe it's just a bunch of silly photos where it's a bunch of outtakes that were the accidental portraits, where it's like someone's not looking, or, you know, a kid is kind of like grimacing because they don't want to be in the picture, or, you know, just all of that I think can make a really fun family photo wall gallery too. So
I
picking
love
a
it.
theme is really important, I think.
And so regardless of what project everyone decides to do, engage in your
Mhm.
photos. And I appreciate this idea of looking for personality and looking for expressions or emotions that maybe weren't captured with the posed photos that we still cherish and honor, but also zooming out and looking for those things that kind of reflect who you are and finding connections between generations, like you talked about with your namesake project. Rachel, thank you. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. And everyone who participated, who's participating, you know, make sure and catch some of the other awesome sessions here in the Getting Started Story Track, and let us know what you think. And we are thrilled to be with you this year. Thank you.